I think we are live now. Amazing. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the How D2C Brands Use Content Marketing to Promote Trust panel. We're on stage one, and we're talking about content creation. Um, the pandemic has really fueled the D2C growth story, as we all know, and there's so many success stories coming out of this segment that it really makes it very exciting for us to learn more about how content is can play a big role in brand building when it comes to the D2C segment. Infrastructure has helped, and I think at this point of time there are more than 600 D2C brands in India as of today, and we're going to explore how D2C companies can build a brand for themselves, and how they can use storytelling to create trust with their customers. So we have with us the founder and CEO of LBB, Suchita Salvan. We have the founder and CEO of Bombay Shaving Company, Shantanu Deshpande, and Vikas Bagaria, the founder and CEO of PSafe. Unfortunately, Sumit isn't joining us due to some personal emergency. I hope that gets sorted out soon. So, should we jump straight into it? Perhaps I can ask a question and then we can, one by one, you guys can give your insights to the same. Yeah?
Sure,
Sure.
sure.
Okay, awesome. So, to begin with, I'd love to know your experience. How are niche brands making an impact using content? And if there are any examples that you can share with us, whether it's your own brand or, some example of content being used really well by smaller niche brands, that would really help. So, should we start with maybe Vikas?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for having us, and happy to be in the august company of Suchita and Shantanu. Shantanu, I really appreciate how the Bombay Shaving Company you have built it up. Coming from a very different background, B2B, and creating a product called PSafe, which is always a hush hush. I was always told that the brand PSafe or the name PSafe will never work, but it actually worked towards our benefit because it's an idiot proof name. There are a lot of content which we have created over the last 4 years. If I talk about menstrual hygiene, I think what we did was, being a niche brand and nobody talks about menstrual hygiene, we were always being very honest about body positive, gender equality, and sex positive. I think all our contents were towards those only, while using blood on the sanitary pads, or talking about men buy pad, or talking about bleed your way, you choose your own menstrual hygiene product. I think these, as a, so to give an example, if you ask me an example, I can give you about PSEF, that we have always been very true. And we believed on user generation content. So most of our content was always through user generation, because while traditional brands still focus on TVC, the smaller brands can focus on digital video brand. Again, storytelling, emotional appeal, conversations around the brand have really helped us. So we used to target gynecologists. We used to go and talk to them, and it's always came to in our favor that they started prescribing toilet seat sanitizer whosoever was suffering from UTI. So I think in and all, these helped be safe, and I think I can only give you this reference. Yeah.
Suchita, what about you? How would you think that essentially LBB is a content community based platform. So how has content played a role when it comes to building your brand?
I think content has played the only role when it comes to building our brand because for multiple different reasons. So, and I think for us, the way we've used content is also interesting because we've used content both on the, because we're a marketplace, we've used content on both the user side as well as on the brand and the merchant side, right? So on the user side, of course, users can come to us for recommendations, they can watch videos, they themselves can post through our webinar app platform and become a part of the mission of LBB. But I think what I'd love to maybe spend a minute on is what we've done on the brand side, because I think a really interesting nuance that we were able to tap into is when you sort of look at marketplaces now, no one really talks to their merchant partners, right? All the content creation ends up happening more on the user consumer side, whether it's through working with influencers, you're having your own team in house, so on and so forth. But I think for us, our efforts on the brand side have been actually really, really interesting for us. One simple data point, for instance, is 80% of the brands that are either selling through LBB or work with us in some capacity or the other, they're all inbound leads. And the reason for that is because we've really harnessed the power of content creation, community creation, whether it's been on Instagram through SEOs channels, and even creating educational content. For our merchants and our brand partners, and use that as a way to really bring brands onto LBB. We recently had a really successful tie-up with Microsoft Teams, where we are actually one of the few platforms that genuinely invest time in educating merchants on how they can improve their Instagram marketing, their SEO marketing, and the likes. So I think in our case, our brand has literally been built on the blood, sweat, and tears, at the risk of sounding dramatic, of content. But I think what's interesting is how we've been able to do a lot on the brand and the merchant partner piece, instead of obviously just focusing on consumers, which has been our bread and butter from day one.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because you're actually using content for those niche merchants and businesses to promote them, right? So that's quite insightful. What about you, Shantanu? What are your thoughts on this?
I completely agree with Vikas and Suchita. I think see, I think content has always been crucial for consumer brands, and I'll talk about consumer brands because that's the area in which I operate. Right, from the time consumer brands have become mainstream, probably 1920s onwards, where they kind of really started using content well, and media choice of media was kind of very limited for the longest time till the internet happened. And today the internet has kind of taken content to a completely new dimension in terms of formats, in terms of number of platforms, in terms of sizes of content, kind of content, etc. So two three themes that come out. Number one is, I think consumers are extremely cluttered in the mind, so you don't get a lot of time to really put a message out there. Even if you do, and a consumer is able to is you serve a piece of content, how effective it is very hard to understand. The second thing is, it's fleeting, because you put it out there and then you don't know what really happened. The attributability to real businesses is kind of low. But what we know for a fact is that consumer brands which are able to put which are able to create an emotion in the minds of consumers when they engage and interact with your brand in whatever way, is the only real brand you're building. So the only way to do it is through great content today. And it's very easy to make good content, it's very hard to make great content, right? So that delta is where success is created. We have seen, for example, in our case, like multiple brands. I love brands on the kind of content they create, from established brands like Cadbury, for example, who do fabulous work on content, to new age brands like PCF does a fabulous job. I love what Sugar Cosmetics does. I love what Boat does. They do really good work, both in terms of quantum and quality, right? So they're able to create great quantum of content, great quality in different bite sizes, and they're able to distribute it super effectively so that the same message is consistently going out. So in this cluttered media space, consumers continue to feel the same thing for the brand, and it kind of grows. We have invested significantly in content, so we now have a 30-member team. We have an in-house production studio. We work with external partners like LBB to help us with content creation and distribution. But to be very honest, Natasha, I'm not so sure if there is a playbook or if there should be one, because it is a very fast evolving space, right? So we don't know fully what a great content strategy long term brand for the brand is. We don't know. I don't know if anyone does. So still trying to figure it out, learning the ropes, and hopefully over a period of time we will create a playbook for the same.
I hope we lost her. Yeah.
Did I bore her to death?
I think that's technology. But rightly said, Shantanu. I think nobody has a playbook, right? It's just like the technology changes every 6 months. I think
Yeah.
the content changes every week, I believe, because it's more of topical content. The way we have changed, I can say that the amount of the boldness we are talking about. Previously, I think 3 years back, nobody used to even like it, right? But again, I'll tell you that even on Facebook and Google, they don't allow us to advertise our condoms,
Oh,
right?
really?
So
Yeah.
yeah, the female condoms, yeah. So there are
Dude,
a lot of things which can.
I'll tell you what, right? I don't think I even have an instinct for content today. Okay, I'm 34.
Absolutely.
I don't think I'm that old. I have no clue what people in the company think, like youngsters who are in our production studio, 23, 24-year-old kids. The way they think about content is extremely different.
Absolutely.
What they think is viral worthy or what they think can be a 15-second reel. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm not on Instagram. I'm like, what the hell is a reel, right? And this is what it's supposed to look like. And then they make you dance to something. And I'm like, wow, yeah, this is, I don't know, does this work? But it seems to work for them. So I'm assuming.
Let me do this. Let me jump in because I've played a podcast host in the wild. So I'll start asking
Sure,
you guys
please.
questions. Yeah. Okay. So Vikas, you brought up this really interesting point, right? Which is, when you guys started out Be Safe, a lot of it was about talking about things that are taboo. Two things: how do you broach a topic that may not necessarily even be viral in nature, and may actually elicit negative responses, especially in today's day and age, which has this massive sort of undertone of cancel culture where you never know what you say irks people in what way, right? So could you talk a little bit about what were the guardrails that you put into place for yourself, thinking that here are the do's and the don'ts when it comes to how I build my brand without rubbing people off the wrong way?
No, absolutely. When I started, see, I'm 48. I'm from old
You don't
school.
look it.
Start.
You don't look it.
So I started way back in '97, right, when the word was business, not even startup. And to be honest with you, when got into this business, I didn't have any idea how I'm gonna run it. It's just that I went ahead with the problem statement that UTI, you need to reduce UTI. How you can do that, and the most important part was my customers. I started pitching it to people my generation X, for people born in '70s, and for them it was so difficult to even talk about sanitary pads in front of even their wife or even the sister, or mom, of course. So what we did, one of the girl in a very young girl in my organization, maybe around 18, 19 years, and he said, because you're targeting wrong, you're talking to the wrong TG. Why don't you start talking to us? Because we as a Gen Z, we don't mind talking anything and everything, and then that's the change which we did. I think the gear shifted we did was start targeting the Gen Zs, right? And I think they started talking so heavily that if you see on Instagram now, there are so many sex educator which we had come up in last 1 year.
It's
Dr.
become
Kutres,
cool also.
absolutely,
Yeah.
to talk about sexual education, orgasms, masturbation. I think that's really helped us in last 18 months as well, because the more and more people started talking about it, and the more and more people started coming out in the open. And I think even the LGBTQT, when it got legalized, so
Hmm.
everything really helped us. I think after 2018. So I think the ecosystem evolved,
Build the
and I
narratives
think
up. Yeah.
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 No, that's fascinating. So just rethinking who your user is, making them evangelists for your message, and
Yeah.
using that to drive results. Shantanu, let me come to you, man, because what you've done is extraordinary, right? Like you've got this like crazy incumbent who has 99.99% market share, and you've become a Bombay Shaving Company has become such a interesting, iconic brand in its own right, where you've had to sort of ebb and fight against this massive gorilla sitting in the same room. So talk a little bit about maybe one or two really interesting campaigns that you've done that perhaps helped you get a little bit more share of voice or whatever cool jargon marketers are using these days.
Yeah, good, extremely cool. Thank you so much, Suchita. I think it means a lot coming from you. Yeah, so while the good part about large gorillas in categories is two things. Number one is you don't have to take on the category, and in categories that they leave empty, you can actually really play a good game, right? So Gillette has, and I'm happy to name, right? So Gillette has kind of done a fabulous job in the razor and blade segment, right? Absolutely brilliant. But what they have not innovated on and kind of been slow on are shaving consumables, women's shaving, um, electronic trimmers. I don't think Philips, for example, had a right to be the market leader when Gillette was there, right? But
Absolutely.
Philips is now there. So the entire hair removal space, which Gillette could have owned, has become wide open for men and women both, and that's where Bombay Shaving Company wants to create a dominating position. Um, for us, we, as a men's, which what started off as a men's brand but has now become a hair management brand because we have a 25% of our business comes from women's shaving. and women's hair removal.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and we launched that a year back. So we kind of hired a CEO for it, built a all women team. We keep our distance from it because obviously our understanding of the woman consumer is much lower, and we're building it slowly, right? Two things, right? I think number one is when you take on an incumbent, you have to realize that in the space in personal care, men's brand, whether it's deodorants or shaving or whatever, have always been very external focused, and have and a result of that is they have been very masculine in their approach, right?
Correct.
हमको लगाओ लड़की पटाओ beer पियो rascal बनो, that's probably what they say, right? And if you any deodorant brand, that's fine, that's what works. But our brand is kind of softer. It's taken on more personal care kind of tones to it. The fonts are smaller, our colors are blue and white, and so on. And what we realize is those are the category codes that men actually trust for personal care. So men will use Dove and Pond's and those brands in the privacy of their bathroom. They will trust the women brands more. And we realize that if we are able to take a position that is softer for your skin, be the best version of you, we actually can create amazing content around it. So that's defined our content strategy through and through, which is to be more inward focused. Our choice of brand ambassador, like Ashwin, for example, sophisticated, intelligent cricketer who's kind of, it's not the macho guy, right? It's a more intelligent and smart guy.
Yeah.
And we have two brands now, BSC Women and Bombay Shaving Company. Both have distinct identities, but fit under the mother brand, and it's very inward focused. So thankfully, we have been able to take people on. In a fairly meaningful way.
Yeah. I love that insight into everyone who's attending, right? Like finding what is that positioning inside, right? Finding what is that niche in that competitors aren't really focusing on, where a lot of your content strategy can emanate from. I think that's awesome. Vikas, I want to bring you in because, in the age of to the point that Chantu made earlier, you have new formats coming up every day, right? Today there's Reels where people are gyrating to random, songs. There's, YouTube Shorts. Now there's podcasting, there's web events. Like it's just a cacophony of, channels for content consumption. Any channel that, for you has been disappointing and any channel? Okay, Natasha is back.
Your energy is insane, by the way. I need to learn this skill, man. That was insane.
No, all good. Natasha, I'll just quickly wrap up the question to Vikas and then all yours, yeah? So Vikas, what's a channel that, has underwhelmed you, where you've just been like, bro, matlab paise doob hi gaye yahan pe? And what's been a channel which has just absolutely surprised you? Like, I'll give you an example for LVB. I was the biggest non-believer in SEO, right? Because I'm just like, 100 saal lag jayenge. What's the point, guys? Like, it's a 3-year investment. I need to show results tomorrow. So for me, for instance, like SEO has been this, rocket ship of like organic growth, right? Any, total duds and any total like moonshots that you've stumbled upon?
See, SEO works for us because people do search on Google about the problems with the solutions we have, so that really helps us, and we have been very strong on our organic reach. I think the vertical which really worked for us was of course digital, right? But we being a brand who have always been omni-channel, right? So we were always present at the right places, right with the airports, malls, dhabas, highways. And I think that really helped us in O2O. People do discover us offline as well, and then they come online and they buy us. So we create content wherein we are present where the consumers are, because the next Unilever of the world will not be built on distribution. It will be built on content. It will be built where you'll be able to place your product and people can see. I think Instagram, YouTube, all these are like work for everyone, so it worked for us as well. The one channel it didn't work for us was, I think, when we started affiliate marketing, because we were one of those guys who people will not click because it's a sanitary pad or it's a tampon or it's a cup. So people do go for electronics or a beauty product. So we always get defeated between the beauty and the personal care if we talk about hygiene. So I think affiliate marketing is one where we lost.
Got it. Natasha, back to you.
Thanks, Suchita, for handling the situation.
She did very well.
I'm sure you do a better job than I do. But anyway, I have a list of questions and I'd love to walk through them. But as we were just talking about organic growth, I was wondering, how do brands like your brands basically handle these, the rising advertising costs, and the organic discoveries become so difficult on social now. So how are brands handling that? Perhaps Shantanu, you can start with that.
Yeah, I think that's where content plays a big role, right? And here's the cool part. I think it's really cool. Like, have you seen if there are multiple pods of sugar on the floor, and it's an experiment which Richard Feynman did, right? And ants will go to one pod, and then after a while, a few ants will go to the next pod. Then all of them will follow, even though the sugar is the same, right? So that's how advertising works. And then that becomes like an in-demand thing. So like platforms where brands are coming naturally and something does well, it's cheap for some time, it remains cheap for a very small amount of time until 20 people come there and it becomes expensive. Then people find the next cheap thing and then the next one, right? So I think the idea is to, number one, create great content where you don't need to spend money on buying inventory. Second is be early in the game. Like you should be the first hand to the next sugar pod, right? That's broadly the way I think about marketing. So if you are the 10th brand doing something which 1 month back was cool, then it's not cool anymore. You're probably overpaying for it. So be very clear about where advertising cost is early and cheap, and then move on quickly and keep your eye like 2 months down. Three. And this is a very fast evolving space. I think Suchita will know this better than most of us, right? It's super fast evolving in terms of just media costs. So be like create great content for the right platforms. Be super sharp analytically on what is attributable cost to deploy and serve, and then be early in the game. So, like for example, the standard platforms today are super expensive. Like I agree with Vikas. Affiliate is like it's a sink, right? If you don't, I mean, it works in very specific use cases. So knowing when and why it will work is important. So that knowledge is important. It's one that evolves. It's not again something that you know.
What about you, Suchita?
I think, actually for us, I know right now, like content to commerce is a new buzzword, and apparently it helps in raising a shit ton of money. But, for us, actually, the best kind of experiments that we've run have been, content with commerce, right? So, like, I'll give you a really simple example. We about 2 years ago we did this phenomenal collaboration with Pooja Dhingra, which was essentially a pop-up where she curated her favorite products from LBB. It was made into like this shop on LBB. On our website and our app, and we obviously invested a lot of time, effort, and money in getting the product shot properly, etc., etc. What we did was for and this is a very specific example, but I think specificities help at times. What we actually did was we allocated about 20% of our marketing budgets only on the assets that were created around this, so to speak, organic collaboration, with Pooja Dhingra. And the ROASes that we saw on those ad sets were like in a stupendously phenomenal range of like 10 to 15x. Right. So, the key to cracking these channels, because no one can deny that Google and Facebook are the largest. You can't run away from them. But if you truly want to bring your customer acquisitions cost down, right, which we've been able to do, so we're trending at 30% of the CACs that we had, exactly a year ago. And our reason for being able to bring our CACs down is because you're making your content do the work. Right, you're making your content communicate to people in a way where they understand what your brand, your product, your proposition, or whatever else is about on these channels. So I think I think the thing that we've I think have done a really good job of is we haven't said bhai aap content ho, aap yahan pe टिके रहो, आप commerce or performance marketing ho, so please find yourself on this seat. We've sort of made both of those worlds collide by using organic assets, putting the right kind of money behind it. You don't need to overinvest either, and letting the ROASes come from that. I think at the end of the day, it's one of those things that whether you like it or not, good products will always do 90% of the talking, right? But I think when you're marrying good products with really well created content and messages, just a little bit of dry powder on that can actually go a long way, which we've seen across the board, whether it's CACs, repeat users, any of that.
Very, very different, interesting point of view there. What about you, Vikas?
No, I don't have now anything to say after Sushita and Shantanu, because this is what all a matured or a D2C brand will do, and I believe that good content always finds its way to virality. Audience tend to engage more and reshare quality content, and if you can create a quality content, I think for us it works. It's collaboration. Talking about products which are hush hush, we need to get into touch with the doctors, all those guys who talk about our subject, and I think that has really helped. And more helped us is the users. We always go to the users, our consumers, and they said, if you like the product, why don't you talk about it? And we always focus on the long tail influencers rather than, of course, we do have many celebrities, but I think the growth of PSAF has always been our users talking about it. So distribution of content is always through the organic way. I think that worked for us.
On that note, and distribution is such a sticky point when it comes to content. Everyone kind of struggles with distribution. There's so much effort put into creating content, but not enough in the distribution, right? So I'd love your 2 cents on what is the distribution strategy that when you have a great piece of content out there, what is the distribution strategy that works very well for you? So again, Shantanu, let's start with you. Your 2 cents on distribution and how important is it?
No, I agree with you. I think distribution is again a game that we have to kind of um, the strategy has to be very specific to the piece of content, the objective that the content has. If it's a product launch, it's different. If it's a campaign, it's different. If it's a gifting event around a festival, it's different. You have to know what it is that you want. I mean, obviously, you want maximum eyeballs and reach at the minimum cost, and that objective always remains. But everything else is dependent on the business objective, right? So if you just want massive eyeballs and just people to watch something, then you have to find ways to use platforms that works, where your target consumer is available or is engaged. um, uh, we try fundamentally, Natasha, there's no real answer on this, right? But we try our best to make sure that um, we do a 360 degree. So we look at every platform where the content piece can fly, and have like a base budget to distribute it, right? And on that budget, we have like a specific set of metrics around cost per click, cost per view, etc. Like how many percentage of people watching it to the end. And then we start deploying the capital to make it happen. The moment we see a particular channel not doing well, we kind of pause, and we change the strategy, we change the formats, we change things a little bit. If it is doing extra well, we press the pedal harder. And then that 360-degree approach, over a period of time, you institutionally get better at figuring out what piece of content works well. But the idea is same, kind of be completely on top of metrics by platform and channel. Uh, Pause / double down wherever you feel it can work, um, and be very clear about business attributable impact that you're looking at, right? So if you can do that well, my view is simple. Like, my view is that shareability and organic reach is the most important. So that's like the Uber God metric that we try to put out. Great content does not need a distribution strategy. Honestly, great content distributes on its own. So that's obviously the North Star. But till we are able to get there, I think we just do these two things.
Vikas, what do you think?
No, I think that I agree with Shantanu. You need to create a great content. If the great content is there, they'll find its way towards virality. But many a times you need to play on all different channels. Exactly like Shantanu said, 360 degree. So we do the same thing. We go all out, and depending upon which the campaign is, we start putting money on that, and then we stop if it's not functioning well. But we also do a lot of cross posting via popular digital media pages. We go through a lot of offline event as well, because we are very very heavy on offline. 40% of our sales come from offline, so we do that as well, and that really helps us. We use a lot of ATL activities in terms of radios. When we have to distribute some message, which really helps us in people coming on offline, on digital as well. But I think overall, we have to keep on learning every day, because digital marketing evolves every second day. There's no fixed way you can say that you can distribute your channel, but at the end, I can say, if you want my 2 cents, is create a great content, hire great mind, go and talk to the audience which you are pitching to. I think that it will find its way.
Suchita, what do you think?
I think I'm going to play devil's advocate over here, right? Which is like, I think it's really important to unbundle, good content and frequency of content, right? So, for example, Instagram and Facebook require you to post at a certain cadence. And honestly, all the content can't be, God's gift to mankind, right? Like some stuff will be, truly interesting, other stuff will be generic. So I think it's really important to first articulate what's the role that content's playing over here, right? Is it playing the role of audience creation? In which case you genuinely don't have the bandwidth to invest, recurringly on making sure everything's production is top notch. And I think the other bucket of content is your high production content, which in some cases could cost you a little bit more than your daily bread and butter kind of stuff. But that's the kind of content that you also want to put money muscle in just making sure it reaches as many eyeballs as possible. So I'll give you a really good example of the latter, right, which is Cred. Cred obviously, wouldn't have spent a trivial amount of money on all of their IPL ads. But I think more than just the content that they created, the way they distributed that content was genius, right? If they have, an ad that features, Bhakti Lahiri or whoever else, they got 6 other people on Twitter who have a significant amount of following to distribute it. They obviously ran that ad, on TV as a part of their, IPL media mix, and again distributed that content through all kinds of activations, both digitally as well as on television. So for example, now that's a kind of that is also a type of content strategy where that you've really gone ham on creating this great asset, and that the asset will work if you light a matchstick, right? But then you need both parts of distribution plus content to sort of work hand in hand. Then obviously then there's your other bucket, which is content that you create for audience building, which is for example how we build our Instagram or PSafe or Bombay Shaving Company does, in which case you genuinely, like, everything can't be absolutely flawless. And those are the scenarios where instead of focusing too much on the distribution of every unique piece of content, because that's cumbersome, what you want to sort of measure is, okay, what's my aggregated reach? So no single content will do jack shit for me. So like no single SEO kills it for us, right? But it's the aggregation of different SEO content that's been created, which leads to that nice like 3-4 million users coming to our webinar app on a monthly basis. So I think the way I sort of look at it is, it's really important to think through, okay, what am I creating this for? Am I creating this as a part of a marketing campaign, or am I doing this because I'm actually wanting to do audience building? And then you sort of pick and choose how much effort and energy you want to put into it, because for your daily bread and butter thing, it's I mean, unless you're sitting on a shit ton of money, it's impossible to put that kind of diligence or focus into every unique thing that you do. So I think that's a bit of like nuance that I'd add to this.
I
Nice. So
completely agree with
basically,
you. For example, like one of the brands who I love, and she spoke about Cred. So Cred is obviously has a unique marketing strategy. Not sure how effective it is, but it's very, very cool. Gets a lot of attention. But one that I have respected in terms of consistency and just quality of wit, which has led to like massive brand love, at least in empirically in my circles, is what Zomato does. Right. So they
Yeah.
don't do a lot of video production content. They don't do a lot of above the line advertising at all. Right. But their social game is just bang on, and we have a few ex Zomato folks who work with us, and they are in awe of the way that team just is fully empowered, highly witty human beings in their day-to-day lives, right? And they just pick up something that is extremely relevant, culturally important at that moment, a piece of news, and then they kind of put it out on social. They engage in conversations with other handles. They are able to create very cool static imagery with sometimes just a sentence in the red and white, right? It's literally a very smart and witty sentence, but you'll see that it takes on a life of its own. So if you can get the game right consistently, I think you can choose the channels and then the production investment you need to make to do it. Like Red went super heavy in terms of production investment and advertising costs and so on. And I think they like right now you see download Cred all over the place. So that's high investment, high decibel, maybe effective strategy, which allows for people to kind of download the app and see it. Zomato, I think, just wants to put food ordering culturally into everyone's phone in an interesting way. So I think different companies have done really cool things in different ways, and there's no real right answer. But I think getting it right requires a certain amount of sophistication in terms of cross channel is also pretty cool.
Two very different examples. I think one's extremely budget heavy. You have every resource in the world, and then there's a Matto. I'm sure they have resources, but it's just that red and white static image that really one can connect with. And the interesting thing is you know instantly that it's Zomato talking. It's the tone of voice is so Zomato now. Yeah. So two great examples, guys. We
You
have
do
some
a very
very
good job with PR also, right? I think
yeah.
I don't know why stories about Zomato go that viral in the press. There's something that they do well. It is about some delivery guy who, I don't know whether when TikTok went viral in the first way, there was a guy who was earning $350 a day. I don't even think it was Zomato seeded. But that guy's video became like super viral. Then even now, like it keeps coming in the press. So something, whether it's good or bad by that, I don't know. Right? So Zomato does something interesting. Always. Sorry, I cut you short.
Yeah. So we've got some interesting questions from the audience, and I'll just take a couple, even though we're exceeding time. But since I vanished, I think it's only fair we ask a few questions from the audience. And here's a really interesting one. I want to show it here. Going back to the very first days, what kind of content really worked for you, and when you didn't have a massive budget? So when you didn't have investors backing you, and what were the channels that you banked on to bring revenue? So Vikas, why don't you start?
PSafe, reducing the risk of UTI, consumer, the actual customer. I think we made actual customer talk about the product, and I think when we didn't have the money, we just went ahead, started talking to our consumer and say, why don't you write about us? Because that was early 2017, 2016, and when influencer marketing was not that a such thing, and I think that really helped us. That make your consumer, your customer, your brand ambassadors, and I think that really helped us.
What about you,
And I think
Suchita? Yeah.
I think, Shantanu gave a really good example, as did Vikas earlier, which is just figuring out what is that unique insight, right? And I think the unique insight that we found was, our users who typically are millennials, they want information that they can use to signal their life, right? And the quality of life that they have. And for us, therefore, any content that we created, it had to be built and constructed in a way where it would help this customer signal, and it would give them the, ammunition that they need to, position themselves as, cool or interesting or engaged around their friends and friends community. So I think for us, just being very like specific about what is that occasion in the user's head that you can, plug yourself into. That for us was a massive channel of growth, and even to date, 90% of our traffic comes predominantly through content. So not much has changed. We're still very chindi when it comes to customer acquisition, but I think it's a sum of parts that comes together really well.
Shantanu, what about you?
For me, I think when we didn't have a lot of money, the kind of content that really worked was functional product level content, because we were telling people about our products, right? And that's how brands operate, right? First, you talk about the product, like what Vikas was talking about, like about UTI and very functional stuff, right? What the product does. Then the brand moves into emotion. Then the brand moves into pop culture, right? So initially, just product level stuff. Tell people what differentiates you, why, what's the need that we solve for. Channels that worked for us initially were obviously Facebook and Instagram. They're not as effective today as they were 4 years back. But at that time, I think they were extremely good in terms of sophistication of analytics, ability to do a lot of cool things in small budgets. Facebook allowed it a lot in 2016, 2017. Now it's becoming a little bit of a bloodbath, but Facebook and Google did really well for us to kind of scale.
Two more questions, and then we can, I think, close this session because we're running over time. What are some non-negotiables to build a strong content strategy for a D2C brand? Yeah. Okay.
I'll
So
take that. First of all, I don't think we are a D2C brand, and honestly, I don't even know what D2C brand means.
Exactly.
Preach, Shantanu, preach.
I really don't know what D2C brand means. I think.
So let's just say brand. What are some non-negotiables for a strong content strategy?
I think consistency. You need to say the same message over and over again, and you have to be really focused on what that message has to be. Second is, I think, be very consumer first. Don't be brand first. A lot of people get wedded to their brand so much that they forget the consumer. So be consumer first in your approach. And third is, I think, have very high organic standards for your content. Don't have inorganic standards for each. So have organic standards. See whether people are sharing, liking, engaging. That's what is most important. I think everything else is kind of par for course.
Nice. Vikas?
Absolutely, completely echoing what Shantanu has said. You have definitely first consumer product, and whatever you started the brand, what your main strategy was, what your main message was. So we at PSAP, we always talk about body positive, sex positive, gender equality, and we always maintain that we don't want to bring in anything which doesn't support these three structures. So yeah.
I think the one thing that I'll just add to that is, everything is content. I think people look at content in like silos, saying, जो Instagram पे होता है वो content है, जो मेरे blog पे होगा that's content. But everything is content, right? Everything from your product display page to the SMSs that you're sending out to, the newsletters that you're sending out to even your customer support and how they talk to, users. All of that, ties in with what your content needs to live, breathe, and feel like. So I'll just add that.
Yeah. So the last and final question. Just one thing, yeah. Okay. Is it essential to tweak your content as per the medium? I think we spoke a bit about this. And channel you market your product at. Take the example of Zomato, as you mentioned, under cross-channel marketing.
Yeah, I think Shantanu answered the entire thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. No, I mean, I don't think I answered that. Yes, I think it is important to change your content. I think Zomato does a fabulous job. So even if you see their views or you see.
We can't hear you properly, Shantanu.
Oh, sorry. Now?
A bit better.
Yeah.
No, I was like, yeah, you need to change your content as per the media because consumers have a certain habit. When they're on Instagram, they expect a certain kind of content versus when they're on a website or when they're on YouTube, right? So you need to change it. It's not very difficult to do. You can take the same piece of content if it's video or static and change it from a aspect ratio standpoint to some platforms like subtitles, some platforms don't. Some platforms like automatic noise, some platforms don't, right? So there is all of that, and it's fairly standard as long as you know how consumers behave. So, and I think Zomato does a very good job there. So their reels and all are really cool. They celebrate food and their brand identity in a beautiful way together. So I think it's really cool.
Suchita?
Yeah, I think you can keep tweaking your content, but I think generally what your message is that needs to be consistent, which I think all of us have said multiple times over the course of today, where the message needs to be the same. And when I say the same, it doesn't mean you use the same lines over and over again, but it needs to have like the dots need to join somewhere for the customer, right? So, for example, for LBB, our underlying message is something different. So anything that's pushed out, it needs to be pushed out through the lens of something different, right? Whether it's an image that we're using or a post or whatever else that's going up. I think actually. Zomato is a phenomenal example, but I'd urge folks to check out a lot of beauty companies because I think the way beauty companies and luxury companies, those are two categories who just nail consistency. I am not I have like no way do I have the audacity to buy anything from Hermes, but if you look at the way they create content across the board, right, whether it's UGC, PUGC, their Instagram, their website, etc., everything is just so beautifully consistent. It's on their NFTs, like everything is just very consistent. So I just say look at a lot of beauty brands, look at a lot of luxury brands. They're very, very good at diversifying the medium but sticking to the same message.
Right. Vikas?
No, I think it's everything has been said. We have to make content as per what you are saying, and then of course you have to change as per the delivery mechanism. I think nothing to add here. I think Suchita and Shantanu has put it really well.
Amazing. There are also a bunch of more questions, but I think we're out of time now. And I just want to thank all of you for bearing with me and my internet issues, first of all. And I think it was a great conversation. Thanks for sharing your insights. And yeah, I hope we can connect offline at some point and do this in a more personable way. Yeah. So everyone, thank you for joining us.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Natasha
Thanks,
and Suchita, Vikas. Privileged to be with you guys. I just love LBB and PSAF, and the work that you guys do is very inspirational. Thanks a lot.
Love you guys too. I love that this
Likewise.
is a mutual love fest. It's the best kind of panel.
Okay, bye-bye.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.